Stan is joined by Sadie Hampshire, who is descended from the Nisenan Washoe tribes. She lives in her original tribal home, which is now Clipper Gap/Auburn. She is a cultural burn practitioner, a knowledge bearer, and a youth mentor. She is currently pursuing a career in emergency medical technology. Please help us in giving us a warm virtual welcome to Stan Padilla and Sadie Hampshire. I'll now transition to the presentation slides and turn the mic back over to Sue, who will start us off with some questions from Stan.
Thank you so much, Christy, and welcome, Stan and Sadie. We are thrilled that you're here with us today. And while we're waiting to, for the slides to come up with a few images that I think that you'll just love, especially if you've never seen these from Sacramento. Um, so we're going to start off with some questions for Stan, as Christy said. And as we talk, we're going to show some images. So for those of you who are just learning about the Royal Chicano Air Force, this is part of the commemoration, as Christy mentioned, but many people might not be familiar with the Royal Chicano Air Force. Stan, can you give us a brief overview of this artists collective and what was your role in it? What is your role in it? Because it continues.
Well, thank you very much. I'm happy to do that. The Royal Chicano Air Force is an artist collective uh, beginning about 50 years ago. We're celebrating our 50th year this year with all of these events. Reflecting back, the group grew out of the civil rights movement of the times of the 1960s and the Chicano movement in relationship to all of the other civil rights movements and anti-war movement and so forth. What differentiates us? Well, first of all, we're rooted in Sacramento. It was rooted in the California state, Sac State, in its beginning, extended out into the community and hasn't stopped yet. It just has continued to flow. We are an international and globalist movement, which searching for social justice, positive social change, not through the ordinary means of political revolution, but through community building and through the arts and creativity, especially community arts, which integrate visual arts, performing arts, music arts, scholastic arts. So to bring all of those together, which was a unique happening. Today, it's not as unique. Many people have taken that as a model. And what we're seeing here is an amphitheater, a painting at Southside Park, which kind of is a dialogue, the dialogue of the ancients. It's like an ancient future. It's the ancient values in a contemporary form, which was kind of our, what we were known for was to have deep and long roots, recognizing our indigenous past and building upon the contemporary shapes, forms, manners, technology, and projects something into a again an ancient future. And so this is one of Sacramento's most iconic murals. I believe the last I heard, it's been viewed over 7 million times. At Southside Park is the center for all capital marches, protests, colorful events. There have been multicultural events here continuing. The likes of Carlos Santana, Malo, and all of these, Los Lobos, all of these musicians have played here. I am one of a whole group of people, which I'm honored to represent. Many of our founders have now passed away. The majority of our body of artists have passed away. And so I'm one of the elder statesmen now, trying to keep this vision alive, uh, uh, bringing clarity and purpose to that movement as it moves in its trajectory towards the future. In other words,
Mhm.
what can we learn from what was done?
Mhm.
So that's what
Great
I've
question to ask.
done, and that's what I'm doing, and that's what I'm doing right now.
And thank you for that. No, that every time I mean, if you ever come to Sacramento, those of you who are not in Sacramento now, it's a must. I just cannot believe that we have such an amazing and deep artwork right here in Southside Park. And we have a close-up. Now, this was the Southside Park mural was done by many different artists. We have a close-up of one of your panels, Stan. Um,
Yes, yes. And so,
and
go ahead, Sue.
oh, I was just going to say, do you want to talk a little bit about that panel?
Yeah, there are 7 panels in all, each of them by a different artist and their team of workers, because we took on apprentices and mentorees as we worked. The one I did was futuristic again. It's like it's a traditional theme of how does mankind, how do we as a species interact with nature? And this is the very power of transformation, the
Hmm.
through fire, and of course the metamorphosis has become a theme here in Sacramento, and it began with this mural. The mural across town, one of Sacramento's first public art funded public art work, was a 5-story butterfly metamorphosis.
Wow.
And then, let me see, 4 years ago, we installed a new living one in the Golden One Center in the
Oh,
interior.
okay.
So the
Wow.
butterfly has become kind of an unofficial logo of Sacramento as a place of metamorphic change
Hmm.
and growth. And so that's what's behind this. How, uh, what is the process? The butterfly is one being, but it has 3 different distinct forms, which is really unique. First, it's a caterpillar, then into the chrysalis, and then free flight into the butterfly. But it's
Hmm.
only one being. The key to that is what science calls imaginal cells. Within the butterfly, within the caterpillar, there are unique cellular structures that hold the memory of what was and the form that what was, and it leads it all the way to what will be and what will become. And that's kind of the theme of what our whole movement was about. Representing social change, positive social change, uh, for our whole society, our subculture, our Chicano culture in general, uh,
Hmm.
in specific, I mean, and so that's kind of what I did. It was a stretch, because these aren't ordinary images uh, that people just see around them, but
Yeah.
it's something that you have to reach for and think about and
Hmm.
and ponder. So, and in that sense, a tiny bit mystical, you know,
Hmm.
but biological at the same time.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
that's and I wouldn't I love your I mean, looking at that, I hadn't really noticed the cells, as
Yeah,
much as
exactly. Yeah,
and wouldn't have
exactly.
really known how to attach them to um and I believe the other slide that we have shows a large group of people, which ties into your what you were saying about community and the site of
Absolutely.
community gathering. And I was wondering if you could tell us a bit about what's happening here.
Right.
Um,
Well, periodic, as I mentioned, this amphitheater has gathered a big following. This is where the original group events, cultural events, Cinco de Mayo, 16th of September, all took place in that park. And so the whole RCAF, there is an artist wing, which is most people recognize those individuals, but there are a multitude of families and
Mhm.
extended family, and that's what we're seeing here. We see, I'm just looking, the oldest being at that time, this is a little bit dated, this is maybe 10 years old, the oldest being 80, and then the newest in their arms, few months
Yeah,
old. So,
yeah,
and if we were to look at each of these individuals, everybody's somebody in a historical sense, whether they be co-workers, artists, visionaries, musicians, counselors, educators, which leads
fantastic.
us to our topic today, which is artists as educators.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, another question I have that's kind of building off of what you've just said, is just the role, this is a mural, but also just your take on public art in general and the role that that serves. And I'm just so taken by this. I love that taking just sort of basic infrastructure, and making it beautiful, making it something that you want to pause over, you know.
Well,
So we
that's
have a
the
few
idea.
slides here.
That's the idea, is to make our ordinary or make our ordinary life extraordinary. Give it
Mhm.
meaning, give it purpose. As muralists and as artists in general, printmakers and poets and so forth, we were built upon our Mexican culture. We have a long tradition. We are a very ancient people with a collected body of knowledge, music, and so forth. We've been archiving for thousands of generations here now.
Mhm.
And the idea was that in 1900, there was a Mexican Revolution from till 1917. Out of that, in Mexico, began this soul searching of who are we? What are we? What are we going to do? Well, the artists, the major artists then began to paint on the walls and began to a dialogue with community. And so that we follow in that tradition of a mural is more than just a big painting on the wall. It's a social contract. It's an agreement with neighborhoods. It's agreements with funders and building owners and politicians and so forth. We have a dialogue with one another. We speak in higher terms on the streets where we live in our neighborhoods. So, in that sense, it's a community dialogue as well. We're all about community. And as artists, we all could have extended our artworks into becoming upwardly mobile and well
Mhm.
known and all
Yeah.
of that. We all chose and made a turnabout. And I would say these late 1960s, early 1970s,
Mhm.
to dedicate our art to community, not
Mhm.
for the betterment of the whole society,
Mhm.
not just for our personal benefit or to
Mhm.
create ourselves as something different than everyone else.
Mhm.
That's that star system or superstars or something that we see in our society. Well,
Mhm.
no, if we humble ourselves and be really honest, we're workers like everyone else. So oftentimes artists think of themselves in some kind of vanguard movement. I began my career in that way. And one of my art teachers, he said, I don't understand what you're doing. And I said, oh no, because I'm way ahead of my times. You won't understand it for a generation. And he looked at me and he goes, son, the point is to be on time, not to be ahead of your times, which
That's great.
humbled me. And so then here what we're seeing is an electrical box transform, metamorphosis,
Mhm.
the natural wild rose or natural rose. and the natural tiger swallowtail. If you look, I don't see it too much in here. This is pollinators. There are also dragonflies and hummingbirds in here.
Mm-hmm.
And
Oh, yeah.
so,
Okay.
yeah, and this is painted all around and on top,
Mm-hmm.
where you would go, well, why would you paint on top? Well, on the second story, on the airplanes, and now the drones can see the top of the box. So it's another perspective. It's another way of seeing the world. And that's what we presented in the RCAF from our founders, both Jose Montoya and Esteban Villa, who were the founding generals, to see the world in multiplicity, not to see it in a fundamental either or black and white
Mm-hmm.
situation, but there are many shades of gray. Our culture is a blend of cultures. That's what
Mm-hmm.
we can give the world, that we're not this or that. Yes, we are all of it, and we express it, and we're have pride and knowledge of that true multicultural perspective, you know.
That is great, and I would say so necessary.
And
Christy, I wonder if you could show a couple more of the images that we have of some different pieces of art that you've done. We have sort of a treat for people to see.
yeah, and so what we're seeing here, I did this with the group Wide Open Walls, who were doing murals. This is not a group work. This is my personal work. It's like
Mhm.
working with the Royal Chicano Air Force is like being in a band, but every band member is also a single musician and does their own separate work. And this is my work.
Mhm.
So this is what I asked for with this was the ugliest, dirtiest alley and ugliest wall they could give me to prove that I
Okay.
could make that beauty would make a difference. And this is called the positive wall. There's the portal or the doorway to possibilities, that we could take an ordinary alley with, excuse my language, but a urine smelling,
Mhm.
unhoused situation and turn it around. And we did. And then to the right were positive words of spirit
Mhm.
and blood and love, cariño, which is the caring, compassion in Spanish,
Mhm. Mhm.
forgiveness for everyone there. When we'd come to work, we would have to clean everything off and wash everything down because
Mhm.
it was challenged.
Mhm.
What happened then, those people would ask for our blessing every morning. They go, would you bless us and start our day in this way? So we made friends with everybody. And this is on in an alley between I and J on 7th Street. And
Mhm.
people can still go see it.
That's great. I'm making a point to do it very soon.
Yeah, and to me, it
Um,
was like basic social hygiene,
mm,
cleaning up the walls, the visual cortex of our lives, make it beautiful. This is
mhm.
a street calligrapher. He was a young man who had nowhere to do it, would be known as a tagger and a polluter. Well, I
Mm,
invited him to be a part of the mural, so he had a context. He had somewhere to do his work. And
mhm.
now he is a very well-known tattooist, calligrapher, artist,
Mhm.
and community member now.
Very awesome. And we have a few more. Also, some of the slides show just the work of artwork too. But I wonder if you could comment on this slide
Yes.
here.
Well, I don't live in the city. I live in rural Placer County, and I work 200 and 300 mile circumference around the area. I believe what we call Sacramento is more than a city, it's a region.
Hmm.
And so especially now, I'm working all around. This was a stone sculpture that was done during the pandemic. And it's called a landmark. It's a stone poem. It's a circular grounding, a circle with a stone poem, a poem written, etched in the concrete. And then
Oh, interesting.
this main tower is 15 feet tall, and it's a geological model of the ground of Placer County, starting with the igneous rock going all the way up to the surface rocks. So what we're viewing is what we're standing on, the ground that we
Oh,
stand on, which is a landmark. I was very influenced by the pandemic in the sense that it hurt to see that the greatest part of the deaths were our elders, and we know that. And so it's a memorial to those who lost their lives. And for the future, it became a landmark from post pandemic. How do we measure our lives now? By what measurement? Everything has changed. If we look at society today, everything has changed psychologically, spiritually, physically, financially since that time,
mhm.
and this is an enduring memory of that, and honoring. Memory is held in stone, bone, and blood. And that's why memorials are almost always made of stone, because it actually imbues the memories are imbued in the rock, in the stone itself. And so that's what this is. And this was the inauguration in which the Macuili Tonatiuh Kapuli of Aztec Mexica dancers came to bless it and to give their memory to it. And so that's what we're seeing now. And you see me just in awe going, how did that happen? I mean, it was a grueling process through the pandemic, how to work. And these stones were quarried and gathered and everything
Wow.
while we were sequestered, and the
Mhm.
budget doubled on us. The cost of concrete doubled from how we started. So it was like a pure labor of love. No one made any money on this because our
Mhm.
budget changed. So that's what we're seeing here.
Yes.
And this is in Auburn, California, right by
Listen,
City Hall. It's in a park called the School Park Preserve, which is becoming a cultural arts and gathering place
oh,
for
great.
yeah. Oh, it's a great place. Yeah.
That's wonderful. It's gorgeous too. I mean, it looks just so beautiful.
And now,
And what
yeah,
might this be?
this one, and we're only seeing part of it. There were 7 pillars in North Auburn. Uh, you might say it's our most multicultural and diverse area. And so there we have, challenges with, there have been challenges with the different communities, gang life, immigrants, and so forth. So I was commissioned to do standing pillars of integration. That if you look, you see a little bit of all cultures standing, and this is in the main park where everybody meets in these pillars. So I think there might be another photo of this.
Yes,
So you can
the
see,
work of the artwork.
yeah, they're 30 feet tall. I mean, they're an awesome, and they face west. So in the afternoon, like right now, they're just gleaming with
Mm.
light. I'm proud to say they have never been vandalized or tagged or graffitied. And
Mhm.
that's hard to say these days because
Yeah.
everybody has their hands on everything. And
Mhm.
so, but that'll give you this scale. You can see to the lower left a scale of where a human being, the size of
Mhm.
a human being.
Yeah.
So they're large, they're fun, they're this weekend, in fact, there is a big, it's called Concerts in the Park, and it's a Grateful Dead tribute bands. So you have all the tie-dyes, they dance around this and swirl around it, and all the groups come too. We have quinceaneras there. People come and take their pictures there. The baseball teams, the school, there's a continuation school across the street. They come and take pictures and study it. And so it's like the pillars of humanity. Let's
Hmm.
uphold our the dignity of our species by living and working together, and our strength comes from our diversity,
Hmm.
not some
Well,
kind of single monoculture or some supremacy. It nature doesn't work like that. And so
mm,
anyway, that's the little of that story.
well, and public spaces like public parks are a habitat, if you want to extend that
That's
metaphor, for it all to
absolutely.
flourish, right?
And
Um,
if you know nature, the butterflies come and genuflect at that. They're coming, they almost think that they're flowers, they're nectars, they're blossoms. They come right up to it and act like they're going to take the nectar from it. So this one, we're back to the uh, Royal Chicano Air Force. This is at in the downtown plaza. This is 1969, 1970, the transformation of K Street Mall, the
mhm.
underpass, the whole West End was transforming. This was one of Sacramento's first publicly funded public works of art.
Oh, wow.
And so it's very historical, 5 stories, 4 bands of color, 65 feet wide, 6.5 feet tall, each panel times 4. It's the transformation again of the butterfly. At its time in 1970s, this was on the Guinness World Book of Records as the largest painted butterfly in the world.
Really?
Yeah, I think we've been surpassed, but now, but at that time, and it really represented this new vision of Sacramento. It was
Hmm.
pre uh, um, what's happening downtown, with the arena and Golden One and
Hmm.
all of
Hmm.
that. It was before that. This was the transition post Highway 5, Interstate 5, which,
Uh,
that was Japantown. That was the place of
yeah,
the Shingle Springs Verona Indian folks. That was the
yeah.
Mexican barrio. All of that was transformed. Those
Hmm.
people were displaced. This
Hmm.
was to put something in its place of beauty, and that was our idea. Again,
It's great.
what can we build upon that it is positive in all of this,
Hmm.
Well, that change is inevitable.
Yeah.
And the butterfly is always changing, and metamorphosis doesn't discard people or like make garbage. It takes like those electrical boxes and it transforms them into something of beauty. They may be
Hmm.
utilitarian and basically ugly as all get out, but we
Hmm.
can make them beautiful.
Hmm.
That's the portal that we have of our imagination. The imagination is a place of wonder.
Well, that is very inspiring and very necessary uh, now as in the past. And in a way, it's a really good transition to the next topic and the next couple slides, which are Sierra College, which is one of the places where you have been an educator. And I wanted to ask you about education. And you spent a great large part of your life as an educator. And can you
Yes.
talk about your own path in education? You've talked a little bit about it, and the role of artists as teachers, and your work here and beautifying a college sign,
Yeah,
which you have done.
absolutely. Well, first of all, in a bigger sense, in the Royal Chicano Air Force, known as artists, activists, so
Mhm.
forth, but most people don't know we were all, number one, family people. We all have large families. So we're natural educators and nurturers. But we were also professional educators, university, prisons, community centers,
Mhm.
local cultural centers. So everybody was an educator. I was born to be an educator, and it's been over 52 years now that I've been working. So I worked early in the 1970s during the classic period of RCAF at Sierra College when it was small and monoculture. There wasn't
Mhm.
a lot of diversity there at that time. Now it's different. Um, so what I wanted to do here at the base of, yes, we have Sierra College, but there was, just like you gave a land acknowledgement, what
Mhm.
was there before all of these buildings? What was
Mhm.
before and what
That's great.
that education went on before? What happened
Mhm.
before schools and schooling? Because I have always been an alternative uh, learner, lifelong learner, and alternative. Not all learning happens in institutions or in schooling or in Western style education. So I love summer school, night schools, adult schools, and just like the RCF, we established the first elder art classes and youth art classes, the whole spectrum of education. For those who were privileged to go to school, those who were less privileged. But everybody had an opportunity that education is imagination, is innovation. For
Mhm.
example, everything is AI today, just like we're hearing about what's happening at Lake Tahoe. That's the AI revolution that's soaking up the
Mhm.
energies. Well, AI doesn't imagine things, it's programmed.
Mhm.
It has to be told what to do. But the artists, innovator, educators go to the source of things, of wonder, of
Mhm.
and then again, lifelong learning, of what's the nature of things, how do things work, what do we learn from it, what are we, a reflection of our own selves. So for 52 years I have been in constant um educational environment in some way or another, just constant. And I'm going to say, and I'm proud to say that I am retiring this year. I have 1 month left in my tribal work. Um, going to open up into new avenues again. I'm 80 years old. I'm starting again from scratch. And
Congratulations.
yeah, I'm real excited. A little bit intimidated, a little bit scared, a little going, can I do this again? But again, I'm educating myself and I am going to encourage all my mentorees and all of that, students. I have a lot of godchildren, students, spiritual students, mentorees, several hundred that I I want to say administer to. That's not the right word. I'm a grandfather figure, uncle figure, teacher figure. Encourage everybody. Look at
Mhm.
things new again. We are in an unprecedented place in society. Here, like this, we have the
Mhm.
concrete, the vision of what was,
Mhm.
and the LED lights of the world. We have it all in this sign.
Mhm. Mhm.
So the big question is, what are we going to do with all this now?
Yeah.
Where do we go? How do we do
Yeah.
it? That all takes education. AI is not going to give you those answers. Human nature, the
Great.
human heart, the human intellect, imagination, wonder,
Mhm.
that's where we gain
Mhm.
our true gifts. And
Mhm.
diversity and adversity.
Mhm.
My students this morning, I had one crying because it was so hard. And I'm going, yeah, but that's why we're here. If it was easy, you could be at the mall shopping. That's easy, but overcome this adversity, you know, do something. So that's what we're seeing here, the tradition of the land itself and the Nishinan culture, which is first culture. I am very respectful and honoring of the first peoples, the first land, and the first ways of life and the first education, uh, the language, the culture, the innovation. We live in the culture, especially in Placer County, of the pioneers. These are the pioneers. These are the people who dealt with what was the land itself and developed a way of life out of wisdom and knowledge. And so that was the honoring it. And so that's Sierra College.
That is so. And now we also, of course, know that you have long time been a mentor at the United Auburn Indian Community Tribal School in Loomis, California.
Yes.
And can you describe that work and what drew you to it? And we have a picture of Sadie also
Yeah,
here.
when she was little, brings tears to my eyes, these kids. Sadie's cousin there is going to be a new mom as well. So this is when they were younger, and her brother is a fire tender and a worker as well. Um, so I love kids. I love these kids. I have a love of learning. Uh, I was already retired 25 years ago when this school started to be formed. It formed out of the desire and the will of the elders to bring a specific education that was not possible for all the kids of the tribe in public schools and so forth. I've been an Indian educator in Placer County for over 50 years. So I worked with these kids, Sadie, his grandmother, and that ilk. We worked
That's
together, and now I'm Sadie's little niece in preschool. I'm still teaching now. So that generation of people. So what we have is a private tribal school based upon the values, customs, traditions, and um, wishes of the tribe itself. Is non-governmental, non-religious, I should say, secular. Um, Education, site-specific, tribe-specific, people-specific. And students are learning their language again, customs, traditions, artwork, symbolism, writing. So what we saw here, uh, there's so much here. So
yeah,
you can
this is
see
a
I've
little
gone
tour
all
we put
around.
together
And
of
and this one, well,
some of your art.
this one was recently done at American River College, which is the most diverse college in Northern California.
Hmm.
I think 7 or 8 languages are spoken fluently. So what I've done is go around I'm commissioned by all of these places to do this. These are the 99 names of Allah in this work. This, if you see, is multicultural, multi-architectural. It comes from uh, all over the world. The year before this, I was recognized by the California Arts Council with an artist fellowship called the Master Legacy Fellowship, which gave me a sizable stipend to do what I wanted to do. And what I was able to do to travel to Italy, study the Renaissance, Egypt, and India. And so I brought all of this knowledge, all of this wisdom, and fused this. It's called the journey from knowledge to wisdom.
Hmm.
And this is in the Student Learning Center, which is interpretive center, computer center, and so forth. So we have people with different backgrounds, different races, different languages, different worldviews, different, so all living together, that we're all on the path to a wisdom. And just going to school will give you knowledge, but won't necessarily give you wisdom. So
Hmm.
this is really the message behind my education. What I offer in education. Uh,
Hmm.
uh, Really, it's a fusion. It's who we are. This was done, commissioned by the Mercy Corporation in Auburn. Uh, they made a affordable housing complex, a new way of for people who needed assistance, and a new way with counseling, with like a mini village. Well, in that mini village, they had to develop a raw piece of land. And they commissioned me to paint what was on that land so we would have the memory of
Wow.
what was there, which was the Nishinan culture. And it's
Hmm.
the flow of the river and its many forms, its animals, its customs, its traditions, its symbolism, so forth. So that was a really fun project.
I
So,
bet.
and there's the whole project. It's in like the community center where people come together to play their games, have their counseling, maybe have their parole meetings, meet with the social services, play
Hmm.
games together. So this kind of starts on the left and it goes to the right, and it's hard to see, but it's the flowers and the animals, everything's blossoming, everything in its prime uh, um, condition, in its prime state of being, which to me is respect and balance. This
Hmm.
is a painting that was in Elk Grove at the Miwok Elementary School. And it was a school sponsored by the, I think, Wilton Rancheria brand of people. Um, and this is a mural. I painted an original, and this is a digital print. This is 13 feet tall by 25 feet long. And it was a new I like to experiment. So this was like, quote, wallpaper, or a digital mural that was then applied. And this is their land, the source of the Consumnes River, the way of
Hmm.
life, Mount Diablo, and everything uh, in Elk Grove looking southwest. And so I like short-term, meaningful projects that have a lasting effect. So this is when you walk into the front office, this is what you see. This is what you experience. What's naturally there.
That's really beautiful. Um, yeah, we have a couple other things, panels.
This is a ceiling, and this is a private commission, and this is at a sanctuary, a nature sanctuary, and this is their interior. And I painted the cosmos for them. Which was a new expansive way again. The theme was, we're all under one sky, whatever you think, whatever your worldview, whatever your faith tradition is, we're all under the same sky and we're all breathe the same air. How do we come together?
That is great.
Yeah.
Well, Um, so I think maybe what we should do at this point is talk to Sadie for a bit, and then we'll come back and talk to you both together, and then open it up to the audience. Um, Sadie,
Wonderful.
thank
Thank
you
you.
thank you so much. There's so much to show of your work and everything, Stan, but I think people are at least getting a taste of some of what it is that you've done. And we want to talk about this newest piece of yours because it kind of draws back to the Royal Chicano Air Force and stuff like
Right.
that. But why don't we talk with Sadie and then we'll come back to this image, and then we'll open it up to the audience. So Sadie, um, so we've heard about your bio a bit, but I just want to kind of repeat it because it really, I have to say, it sort of blows me away. You are descended from the Washoe tribes. You live in your original tribal home, now Clipper Gap in Auburn. And you're a cultural burn practitioner, a knowledge bearer, a youth mentor. So you've been a mentee or a mentor. And I've read that you're also an artist and you make modern indigenous jewelry and you're a weaver and you're also an emergency medical technician in the making. And so I'm wondering, can you tell us what motivates you to do all of these things?
Absolutely. So first I'll start off by introducing myself for everybody in Nishinan. So Homakani, Hintay Nape, Sadie Hampshire, Tenku Nishinani, Tamatiwasho Nani, Chikamakanem Nanim Opule Nan, Wallace Enos Nan Humwak. So in Nishinan, I said, hello, my name is Hintay Nape, or my English name is Sadie. I am Tenku Nishinan and Tamatiwasho. I come from Clipper Gap in Auburn, and I am a part of the Wallace and Enos family. And for me, honestly, my big motivator to kind of try to be that pillar in my community was my grandma April Wallace or April Moore. And I grew up with her all the time. By the time that, I was really being around my grandma. She already had been doing stuff with Stan, and I had been going to the tribal school by then, so he was my art teacher. And just she always made sure that I understood how important culture is and how important passing traditions down are, especially to our younger generation. And she just would always take me to whatever cultural stuff it was that she was going, and she'd always play her language. She'd always play she's my third great grandma Lizzie Enos, but I just call her Grandma Lizzie. And she'd always play her language recordings in the car. And to her it was like she wasn't doing anything. It was just kind of like the work that she felt like she knew she had to do. And so unfortunately she passed away when I was 11, but I kind of always just held myself in as like, what would my grandma do? How would she go about this? Or what would she want to see come out of this? And that kind of really was my motivator to try and do more because she always tried to, give us what she kind of really didn't have when she was our age. And especially, really involving us in culture and really telling me how important it was. And she made all my regalia. I just told her one day when I was really little that I really wanted to start dancing, and she made everything for me. And she didn't even act like it was so much of her. She just was so happy that I even mentioned it. So she immediately made something like that for me because she understood how important it was that I do this and that I continue doing this as an adult. Um, and so for me, it's really kind of just been like kind of walking in her footsteps in a way, because she did so much for not just the indigenous community, but also just the community that she lived in. And she was just an amazing person. And for me, it kind of just that's kind of really where it stems from.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, and you were a student at the United Auburn Indian Community Tribal School, and a mentee of Stan's, of course, and now as a youth mentor yourself. Um, can you talk even more, because I know that you've talked about it some, but about what art, community, and mentorship mean to you?
Well, I mean, for me, I was just always, I absolutely loved art as a kid. It was just such an easy way of expression for me. You can say so much in an art piece without even saying any words, whether whoever interprets how they want to interpret. But it was just always a huge calling to me. And I loved Stan's class. Every single time I got to be in Stan's class, it was like the highlight of my day because I really felt like I could express myself without having to explain myself to people. And just seeing the way that art brings community together and the way that a simple art piece could really make somebody think about either a certain issue going on or just the world as a whole, for me, kind of just really like kind of solidified it for me in a way too as well. And especially like, Stan just telling me how it is important that also we continue as artists to make art and continue to make people think by looking at what it is that we're making, because who knows what could happen from, making this piece and somebody seeing it and then they go and do something else within their life because of how, the motivation or
Yeah.
the inspiration that they get from it. But it just really brings community together in a way that really makes them think.
Well, and just to, like both of you have talked about, I mean, to appreciate thinking itself, right?
Yeah.
You've got AI, which is not thinking, so that idea of actually appreciating imagination and what you can pull together and what diversity can challenge different things and bring different things out. I think both of you, I think that that's really important, and that's part of what is so important about the Royal Chicano Air Force's take, right? I remember when I first started reading about the RCAF and just being so impressed that, yes, it was an artist collective, but it was really a community collective, that there was a garage, right, that was Royal Chicano Air Force members, right? That you didn't have to be, painting or something like that. It didn't have to be that. It could be community service as a form of creativity. And that, that sounds a lot like what you're also saying, and just your many different activities, Sadie. And I know that you're involved with the Indigenous Futures Network. Can you tell us about this organization and how do you envision work that advances Indigenous futures?
Absolutely. So, Indigenous Futures Society is run by my uncle Brian Wallace, and at first it was originally called the Sierra Fund, and then they wanted to make him CEO, but he told them that if he was CEO, he wants a complete rebrand of it, and he wants the entire board to be Indigenous people. And a lot of the people who are a part of the Sierra Fund were already ready to retire and had a lot of respect for my uncle. So they retired and they completely turned it over to him. And now he has turned it into just this amazing nonprofit network of, focusing on tribal sovereignty and cultural sovereignty as well. And I've done a good amount of work with my uncle Brian Wallace as well. He's an amazing, amazing person, and I really learn a lot from him every single time I'm around him. He was the Washoe, Nevada, and California tribal chairman for 20 years, so he's done so much and still continues to do so much. And so being able to be a part of that and really being the one that's putting the youth focus on it is, for me, I think a huge step because again, like when they were our age, they never really had anything like this before.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
a lot of younger indigenous people, they don't know how to get involved or be involved within their community. So where I come in is I am an ambassador for Indigenous Future Society. So I will go out and talk about and promote Indigenous Future Society, especially to Native youth, because we want to give them that chance that they think is so far away and show them that like it's a lot easier than, you think it could be, because that's the number one question I get as a youth is how do you do it? What do you do? And it's always kind of a simple but a little bit of a complicated answer. And I was telling people like I just show up, I somebody would tell me about something or I'd be invited to something and I wouldn't have certain expectations of how something would come out. I'd just show up. And,
Hmm.
by the end of it, I have better connections. I have more people that I can, rely on or also, reach out to and ask for help and whatnot. So we are now starting a Nation Builders, which is again our kind of more of a youth-centered focus and trying to figure out like how do we get our Indigenous youth back into their community and back into, what they're passionate about, but making it very cultural forward because, our generation and our youth, like they're the ones that are going to continue to drive this forward and continue, just doing stuff for our people and making sure that our children down the line are able to practice their traditions and be a part of their culture and understand where they come from. And so that's kind of really what Indigenous Future Society is really prevalent with, is wanting to make
Hmm.
sure that, like we're still here and we are still continuing to practice our culture.
Hmm. Hmm. Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, before we open it up to the audience, I just had a question for both of you. As mentioned previously, this speaker series event is part of the 6-month commemoration of the Royal Chicano Air Force in formation. And that has included talks and classes and exhibits and readings at 15 different institutions, again, organized by La Raza Galleria Posada. So what I'm wondering about is for each of you, what about the Royal Chicano Air Forces and your own approaches to art and service? What about these challenge how we are, approach art and community in general today, in our thinking today? And I don't know, Stan, if you want to take that one up first, and then Sadie, and
Yeah, well, it's really challenging today because we have so many challenges. Uh, but again, art is more than just a pretty picture or a product. Art truly, from my point of view, is a process. You mentioned it, it's thinking.
Mhm.
It's awareness, it's responsibility, as Sadie's talking, responsibility to the
Yeah.
cultural heritage, and to bring that forward. To me, it's art is a bridge. It's a bridge for us to move forward. What we're doing today is like Sadie's grandma April was a bridge. She would go to
Mhm.
everybody, not just her own community, but whoever would listen. She worked and gave. It was a part of being, to me, a good person, being generous, being kind, contributing, being responsible for the life that we live and to make things better. And yes, I do make a living from my art. And yes, I do make quote products or end results, but truly it's the process of doing this
Mhm.
artwork, which to me it's a language. It's a language of,
Mhm.
I'm on a stretch here a little bit, but it's a language of spirit. It's a language
Mhm.
of energy. It's a language of the unknown. It's the language of the unseen, the unspoken,
Mhm.
and which is kind of rare in our society because we live in a very fundamentally dualistic society. It's good or it's bad. I like it. I don't like it. I want it. I don't want it. But there's in our culture, in our native culture, we live in a much more integrated and complex thinking process. We really honor respect and language and the words. You can hear Sadie's words carefully chosen
Mhm.
for a young person. It's not just like, but it's really thoughtfully prepared, and so it's like living. It's a living culture. It's a living history. It's a living artness, shall we call it? So
Mhm.
there is a difference between doing the art for higher purposes and higher intelligence than just to make money or to be seen, fame or fortune or a lot of what we see for vanity. It's
Mhm.
really to me, one of the fundamentals. Expression is one of the fundamentals of being a true human being.
Mhm.
When
Mhm.
you cannot express yourself, how do we know when we're well? Because we're dealing with sickness all the time, but
Mhm.
well people are able to express themselves freely. And so that's what we're trying to do here is continue that ancient process
Mhm.
of building bridges across the world,
Mhm.
to since we're all human beings and all human beings go together and we're all have a similar root to it.
Mhm.
Anyway, I can go on talking forever, but
Well, there's plenty to say. Um,
yes, that's right.
how about you, Sadie?
Um, can you repeat the question again? Please and
Well,
thank you.
what about the RCAFs, but also your own approaches to art and service challenge how we're thinking about things in general today?
Well, for me, I mean, again, kind of going back on like for me, kind of creating an art piece is kind of to get someone to think about a certain thing or kind of put into perspective something they never really thought about before. But especially because, like I said earlier, an art piece can say so many things without
Hmm.
having any words at all. And
Hmm.
it's really all up to the person and how they interpret it. Especially
Hmm.
because, it could be a simple art piece, but to that person, it could be so moving or so um
Hmm.
real to what is going on to them in something that they're going on in their life. But for me, it's really just something that again brings community together because art is for me, especially right now, I feel like handmade art, whether it's painted, drawn, however it is, because even Stan has taught me art goes beyond just painting on the canvas. There's different mediums of art, and that's absolutely perfect because, again, art is, you can't really put an exact label on what it is. It's, something that somebody created
Hmm.
for a specific purpose, or, kind of just, again, like I was saying earlier too, as well, for me, it was a way to express myself without having to explain myself to other people.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
could kind of make an art piece and they can kind of understand in a certain way of, who I am or how I'm trying to do something. And, just how, because, I live in Auburn and there's so many of Stan's art pieces around here as well. There's
Must be
a
so
very
cool.
Yes, there's a very beautiful mural on the side of a building, which used to be called Mickey's Boots, but is now the Hillmont. And it just shows how, us Nishinan people just went about daily life within, when my ancestors were here. And, for me, I think that's just another beautiful example of you can just look at it and you don't really have to be like, what were the people doing here before me? You can kind of just look at this and interpret as how they would go about their daily life. And it just gets people to start talking. Some people will see it as one way and another person will see it as another, and then that kind of starts that conversation again of and then people start wanting to do their own independent research, and again it's just getting
Hmm.
people to think and be more
Hmm.
involved within community.
Hmm. Hmm. Wonderful. And here we're seeing an example of a very, very recent piece by Stan, Nostalgic Flight. Stan, do you want to say a couple words about it before
Yeah, well, of
we
course,
open up
the
the floor?
RCAF are known as graphic poster designers. That's
Hmm.
given globally, we're known for. This is the latest in those um, that graphic posterism, and it's storytelling. And this is the story of the last muralist standing. And I happen to be the last muralist of the RCAF. My compadres have all passed away. So I'm carrying on that tradition. And this is kind of a whimsical story of the last muralist painting a mural, thinking about his friends. And he takes a nostalgic flight to the land of the dead to visit his friends who have passed away and to get their guidance. What do I do? Where do I go? Just like Sadie said with her grandma, how would you guys do it? What are your values? Give me some guidance. I'm here all alone, doing this. I'm up on the scaffolding, I'm high above everything
Hmm.
else. Give me some guidance. What is it? And that's kind of the story when you look at it. It's highly detailed. Took 3.5 months to draw it. And then
Wow.
I think a month or so to print it. And it's a limited edition print. And it was done this year, 1965. I mean, 2025. So it's last year now, but it's
Yeah,
still relevant. Again, it's that story of
absolutely.
honoring the past traditions, honoring the ancestors,
Hmm.
and humor, a humor
Hmm.
of
Yeah.
laughing at life, of laughing with grief, with death, with everything. And again, as keeps mentioning, as Sadie mentioned, as you mentioned, I mentioned, this thinking
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
how important that is. We as human beings, we think. That's what makes us different, and which makes us stewards of the whole creation because
Hmm.
we do think, we set intentions, we have motivation, and we do it. And in that sense, and I kind of want to end here or, begin to close.
Hmm.
This is medicine, what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not herbal, maybe it's not, like the doctor gives you, but it's spiritual medicine, it's inspiration, it's storytelling, it's enriching, it's it's meaningful.
Hmm.
And that, in a sense, to me, is medicine. Meaning is medicine. Positive meaning is good medicine. And so that's what I do. I very rarely do anything negative, not
Hmm.
that there's room for everything, but
Hmm.
mine is to make like a doctor, to help
Hmm.
make people well, and like a pharmacist to give them the medicine that they need, or the herbalist or so
Hmm.
forth. And so that's what's behind this poster. Uh, it's shown all over. It's national distribution, and yeah,
We have a copy at the state library
yeah.
too,
So the
if you want to
library,
come
it's in
and
that
visit us and see
collection.
it up
Yeah,
close. There's one thing I love so much about it is each time you look, you see something different. And I think that also, it really runs counter to that idea that people think they have instant mastery or understanding of things. It's like, no, you actually don't.
that's
Look a little closer at this. You probably didn't even notice this thing.
that's right.
You
Exactly.
know?
Yeah.
Well, why don't we open it up? I know that we have some questions, so why don't we open it up to the audience? Marissa, did you want to ask these questions?
Yes. So we had a few questions that have come in, so I'll try to go in order. Our first question is, what challenges did Chicano artists face when trying to preserve their culture and history through art?
Well, there was no genre known as Chicano art. We didn't have anywhere to go. We didn't have any places or anyone that would support us. We had to define our own movement, which is beautiful because that meant we had to speak for ourselves. No one gave us anything. In fact, it was adversity everywhere. Only now, 50 years later, we're seeing all of this. We weren't in museums, we weren't accepted in galleries, we weren't collected, all of that. So we had to rely on our own selves, and that meant to honor our customs, our traditions, our indigenous past, our heritage, and the legacy that our ancestors left for us. They struggled and sacrificed so that we could have the opportunities that we had. Our job was then to show the respect and do something respectful and positive with it for the future generations. We had to open the doors, open the windows, open the processes, uh, you know, so that the future could have these opportunities. Yeah, it was a challenge. It is a challenge continues to be a challenge. But who's to say challenge is a bad thing? I don't. I get strength from it.
Thank you. Our next question is about murals and public art. And this attendee wants to know, how do you think projects like murals and public art help preserve histories that are often left out of textbooks and classes?
Well, of course, again, it's storytelling. It's a narrative. It's just like writing history. When the Mexican muralist showed us that what you put on the walls, Simon and Garfunkel also told us the words of the prophets are written on the subway walls. When people don't have their stories, don't have their histories, are not in institutions, then they have to go to the streets. They go to the walls and they tell their story. It's free, it's open, and it tells it to the whole community. And so public art, and I don't even like that term, public art is really community art. It's about neighborhoods. What would you have in your neighborhood? What do you value? It shows values. It shows customs. It shows traditions. It shows living things that oftentimes in books and museums, it shows it way after the fact. 50 years ago, we were doing this work. It's barely being shown now, 50 years later, at the Crocker Art Museum. All the work we've been seeing, it's older already. Myself, I'm interested what's coming next. I'm still working, and I have several big public works that are going to be seen in these next few years that I don't want to talk about quite yet, but they're going to be noticeable. So we continue to tell this story.
Thank you. Sadie, do you want to have anything to add to that before I move on?
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of just like again piggybacking off of Stan, our history is rarely ever told in the public Western school because, that's something that they want to bury. They don't want to remind people that this is something that their version of America did. And, like I said earlier, you see these murals and they're telling these stories and it makes you think and then you start talking about it and other people start talking about it and then you want to figure out what it means or what it's about. So you do your own independent research and you find out like this is a piece of history that is being talked about, this is another way for us to preserve our culture because our people had been doing art since time immemorial, since we've been here. We've been making art, whether it's baskets, whether it's, again, we've always painted on the walls. So, or whether it was making our drums or making our regalia, it's just another form of art. But this art is another way to preserve our history. And for me, I feel like, especially such as cities like Sacramento, where there's just murals of art around all the time, it gives the city or the community some kind of liveliness because, instead of walking out and seeing like bleak, modernized buildings that are just white, gray, or beige, you get these beautiful paintings that really tell a story and remind people, especially that, us brown people are still here and we're still living, we're your neighbors, we're the people who bag your groceries, we're the people who help you across the street, like the kindness that I have seen living within my community and being around the people that I have, it's very different whether it's to, you go up into like Western society and you ask a question and you're practically shunned for not knowing it already. But for me, it's just, again, like these murals and these projects, they remind people of what's happened in the past before and that we can't forget it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think you can't see me, but I was nodding the entire time that you were speaking. Um, We have another question, and I'd like to address this to both of you. Where do you get your inspiration before you start a new mural, a new painting, a weaving, for example, or just any new project?
You want to go ahead, Sadie?
Sure, I'll go first.
Hmm.
Well, for me, most of the time, it's kind of just something that comes to me, whether it's a sort of feeling or emotion or something that I also, again, want to preserve in a way that, could outlast me. And I have to at first sit with myself and think about how do I want to execute this? What is my vision as to how I want it to come out on the medium that I'm using? And especially because I've just begun starting to weave, so I would call myself a beginner weaver. But for me, it's another preservation of history when I think to myself, how do I want to go about this basket? Because you have to be in a certain sense within your mind and your spirit, if you're not in a good mood or if something's upsetting you, you don't pick it up and you don't start doing it because you're putting that energy into that piece. But you have to be in a good space within your head and your mind and your spirit as well, because then that's when it really comes to life and it really brings that power and that emotion into it. Because, you know, you go into like galleries that have colonial like paintings and whatnot, and people look at it and they're like, oh yeah, like that's a really nice art piece. I like the lighting they did, blah blah blah. But a lot of from what I've heard of when a POC person or it's just POC person of color, my bad, makes an art piece, a lot of the time people just say the feeling and the emotion that rose from that looking at that piece as well. Um, let me take a, but kind of for me, the inspiration is, how do I want to leave my legacy behind? And I feel like that's kind of what really, for me, motivates more art pieces out of me is like, how do I want to be remembered and how do I want my community to remember me?
Beautiful. Thank you, Sadie.
Mm, words.
Yeah, I'm piggybacking on you now here, and I feel the same way. It's feelings, emotions, a memory, something I heard that I wanted to build upon, I wanted to express, I wanted to share. Um, what's different for me is I'm a contemporary artist, so I don't copy, and I have to be really careful as an indigenous person not to say something that I shouldn't be saying in public. There are things that should be seen and should not be said in an open public. So I'm working in an area of what can I share or appropriate from some other tribe or something. It's like somebody tells me something, I go, well, I'm fantastic painting. No, you can't do that. That's somebody's dream or that's somebody's life. So, I work to do something different. And that's when you get to originality, authenticity, to dig deep and do something that's never been done before, maybe. And that's what becomes an artist's style in a way, too. It's like, whoa, that's how they do it. For example, in my work, I'm primarily abstract because I don't like to make a lot of images. The one we're seeing now, yeah, and that was made for that. But most of the time, it's more abstracted. It's a feeling. It's uh, a notion, and I just open the door and let someone else see it. If they see it, they see it. And so, dreams. I'm gonna go out prayers, hopes and memories, things that I heard when I was small, younger, I should say. And how would I tell the world that? And it's like Sadie said, like the paintings that are on the cave walls, something that I do, my paintings, I consider them cave walls. Their campus is today, but it's a K wall. I was here. I mattered. I made a difference. I am, and I'm here, and this is who I am. And I leave this for everyone. So, yeah.
Thank you both for sharing this perspectives. We have a few last questions I think we have just enough time for. I'm going to combine them. They're both related to the RCAF, but I'd also like to open it up to Sadie as well to talk a little bit about her perspective as well. So the questions are first, how did the name Royal Chicano Air Force develop? And then related to that, what role did community play in the success of the RCAF?
What was the second part again?
What role did community play in the success of the RCAF?
Okay. So the RCF began as the Rebel Chicano Air Force. And then people confused it, or then it went to initials and acronyms, RCAF, and said, well, you're the Royal Canadian Air Force. No, no, no. So it was rebranded in a sense, redefined, telling our own story. Then, no, this is the Royal Chicano Air Force. And for those who don't know, because the word is thrown around, Chicano, what does that mean? That's a subculture. It's not a racial group, although most people come out of the indigenous or Mexican American community, but it's an attitude. It's a political stance. It's a commitment more than what, a subculture or a race. It's not racial. So I forgot the second part of it again. I'm sorry.
No, not to worry at all. So the question was, what role did community play in the success of the RCAF?
Oh, yeah.
And I'd also like to open it up to Sadie as well, if you could also talk about the role of community in your own success as an artist and mentee, so or mentor.
Yeah, the community is everything. They received it. They spoke back to it. They understood. They found their place. Because the question was, okay, so we're a group, we're a subculture, we're a movement. Where's our place? Where do we belong? We all came from different places, and not necessarily landowners or business owners. That's how that amphitheater came about. There we could claim a place that everybody there who saw it, loved it, cared about it, could be a part of it. That's why today, millions of people, and when we have these big marches and everything, you know, the farm workers first arrived in Sacramento back in the early 70s. They came to that mural. It gave them people a place. That park was a POC, a park for people of color. There was a place for us. There was no, where do we go? Hang out on the street corner? Go to a mall? So community was everything. Acceptance by community. And when I say community, then when I first came to Sacramento, I joined the Air Force because it was the first group or institution at that time that was working openly with indigenous community, indigenous ideas. There were people of different tribes, different persuasions. And so it was a natural fit for me that part of the mission statement was the furtherance and the betterance and the social justice for Chicano people, indigenous people, and the environment itself, and all people.
Thank you. Sadie, do you want to add anything from your own perspective about the role of community in your own life and career?
Yeah, absolutely. So, kind of when I was really just starting out, I really first started like being on my fire crew. And, kind of just being on that and them, sending me to different kind of classes to kind of open up my career and further myself in my career. And from there, getting to know people, I kind of learned from this, you can't really be shy and reserved, especially if you want to further yourself on your path. Like you have to be involved within community and you have to talk to community and you have to hear, what their worries are and, let them know that like they're not the only ones. And I feel like for art, that's kind of really what sums it all up into one because, with a single piece, you can make a whole group of people feel understood and feel seen, and that somebody out there understands them and what they've gone through. And especially for people of color, because the way that we've had the start in so-called America, it's just been so devastating. And, we we felt like there was nobody for us. There was nobody on our side. There was nobody who understood us. But as soon as we, again started making our art and putting out there for community, community came together and community organized and they're all, what are we going to do for our people and what are we going to do for ourselves? And, you know, a lot of, political art brought people together and made them open up to like the realization of what's going on around them and how it is affecting them. And again, that's just going back to what I said, a single piece of art can speak thousands of words with not a single word in there. And it's just another way for different parts of community to know that they're not the only ones out there. And for me, if you want to make art, it's gotta, somehow be within the community as well. It's fine, like if you want private art pieces and whatnot, there's art pieces that I've made and never took a picture of and just gave it to somebody else. So there's a lot of times people are all like, "Can I see your art?" And I'm like, "I don't really have pictures because I'm just giving them away." But again, that's, bringing in community because now this person has something that they can really tie to that's invaluable. They can, really look at that and, feel a sense of community as well. And yeah, for me, I feel like community is a big part of art, because if you wanted to get it out there, if you want it to be seen, you gotta pertain it some way to community by whether it's putting it in community, like on the side of a wall, or having it pertain to a certain kind of struggle that a lot of people can understand. And, from there they talk and they're like, how do we, get this done? And for me, I think that's how community really plays a big part in art.
Well, what a wonderful way to wrap up our talk. I can't thank you both enough for having spoken with us on about your thoughts and art and community work. And I'm so excited that Stan, you've just retired and moved on to the next chapter. And Sadie, clearly you are roaring to go and all of that. And I think all of us. Who are hearing this and will hear this in the future, right? Because this is recorded. So thank you so much for coming. And Christy's popped back in here too. So
Let's say good evening. Thank you everybody for joining us. We'll have a recording up in the next week or two for you to rewatch or share with other people. And thanks for joining us. Good night.
thank you so much for coming, everyone.